Welcome back to another deep dive. Last time we got into those meaningful coincidences. You know, the ones that seem to defy all odds?
Right, like when you're thinking about someone and they
Yeah.
call you out of the blue.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But today we're going even deeper. We're going to be looking at Carl Jung's concept of archetypes.
Archetypes. Yeah. Jung was so fascinating because he saw those archetypes as more than just symbols. He thought they were active forces shaping our lives, like a hidden code in our DNA.
It's like psychological DNA.
Yeah.
That's wild. So you're saying it's not just random chance that we keep seeing the same patterns and themes in our lives. There's something bigger at play.
Exactly. Jung believed that those archetypes, the universal ones, the innate patterns of thought and behavior, well, he thought they were embedded in our unconscious minds and that they influence how we perceive and experience the world.
So is it kind of like,
You're
it's
like,
almost
that
like,
computer's operating system?
yeah, like an operating system.
Yeah.
All computers running the same OS share those basic functions.
Yeah. Jung believed that we as humans, we share these fundamental patterns, like archetypal patterns. And these express themselves through recurring symbols, myths, and motifs. You see them across cultures.
So we're talking about things like yin and yang, the hero's journey, wise old men and women, those kinds of things.
That's it. Those universal stories and symbols that resonate with all of us.
Okay, I see.
They tap into something Jung called the collective unconscious.
Oh, wow.
It's a much deeper layer of interconnectedness. It goes way beyond our individual experiences. And the thing is, Jung really believed that these archetypes are the driving force behind synchronicity.
Wow. That's a pretty big claim. So how do these archetypes actually create those meaningful coincidences? Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's use the example from Living in Flow about applying to a school. You send in your application,
Okay.
but instead of just waiting, you proactively call the department to follow up. Now, on the surface, that just looks like an action you're taking. But Jung would say you're actually shaping your reality in a very subtle way.
So I'm increasing my odds.
You're increasing the weight, so to speak, of all the branches on a metaphorical tree that are going to lead to you getting accepted. And by doing that, you're making it more likely to run into someone who can help you get in.
So it's not just about wishing and hoping. Our actions, even the small ones, they can actually change how likely those chance encounters are.
You got it. By taking action, you're unconsciously aligning yourself with the archetype of the student and tapping into those forces that facilitate learning and growth.
Nice.
And that chance encounter, well, it could lead to a whole cascade of events that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Maybe you meet someone who knows the head of the department, or maybe a spot opens up unexpectedly. It's almost like you've given the universe a little nudge, a nudge in the right direction.
Fascinating. So it's not blind luck at all. We're participating in creating these synchronicities.
Absolutely. And this is true for all kinds of situations in life. Relationships, job opportunities, creative breakthroughs. When we align our actions and intentions with archetypes, we're making it more likely to experience synchronicities, ones that are related to those very archetypes.
Wow. Okay. I'm starting to see how powerful this whole concept can be.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually recognize these patterns in our own lives? It all sounds a bit abstract.
Well, you can start by paying attention to the symbols, myths, and stories that you connect with. What are some themes you see pop up in your life over and over again? Are there certain characters you find yourself drawn to? Living in Flow and the Synchronicity key are both really great places to start exploring different archetypes.
So we need to become more aware of those underlying patterns.
Yes, and a great example of how these archetypes work can be found in the I Ching, the ancient Chinese text.
Oh, yeah. The Book of Changes, right? I've always been curious about that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. The I Ching uses 64 hexagrams. Yeah, 64. And each one represents a different combo of yin and yang, one of the most fundamental archetypes. It offers guidance and insight, almost like a roadmap of how those archetypal patterns interact with each other.
No.
What's really cool is that the I Ching isn't just some static text. It's supposed to be used with synchronicity. You ask a question, then you throw some coins or yarrow stalks, and you get a hexagram. That hexagram reflects the archetypal forces happening right then and there, and it offers guidance and insight.
So it's like tapping into the wisdom of the universe.
Yeah.
Using synchronicity as a tool for understanding and making decisions.
Exactly. And it really highlights how dynamic the relationship between archetypes and synchronicity is. They're not separate concepts at all. They're interwoven, constantly informing and influencing each other.
Wow. There's a lot to think about here. So we have these archetypes influencing our experiences,
Yeah.
shaping the chances of synchronicity happening.
And the most empowering thing is that we aren't just passive observers, we're active participants. When we understand the forces at play, we can start to consciously shape our own lives.
So we're not just puppets of fate. We have the power to influence our reality.
You got it. And that's where things get really exciting. But before we jump into that, let's take a look at some examples of archetypes and synchronicity in action.
All right, so we've been talking about these archetypes working behind the scenes. Can we get into some specific examples of how they show up, like in those synchronistic moments?
Oh, absolutely. One we see all the time, going way back to ancient philosophy and still playing out in our everyday lives, is that duality of yin and yang, light and darkness.
Oh, interesting. So are we talking good versus evil, like those classic battles in movies and stuff?
Well, it's more nuanced than just good guys and bad guys. It's about the interplay of opposites, how they work together. You can't have one without the other. Like, you can't have light without darkness or good without the concept of evil. They define each other.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Those archetypes, they create a kind of tension, a push and pull that drives change and growth.
Okay, I see what you mean. How does that play out in synchronicity, though? Are we talking about bumping into your nemesis at the coffee shop?
Huh. That would be a pretty dramatic example. But yeah, think about it more broadly. Have you ever had a streak of bad luck that suddenly turns around when you least expect it?
Oh, yeah, totally. Like that time I missed my flight, and it turned out it was delayed anyway. And then I got rebooked on a flight with a free upgrade to first class.
There you go. That's a perfect example of yin and yang at play. That initial setback, the darkness, it actually set the stage for a positive outcome. It's like the universe used that negative event to push you forward, to get you where you needed to be.
That's such a helpful way to look at things. It makes those frustrating times feel a little less frustrating, like they're part of something bigger.
Exactly. And this brings us back to the I Ching, those 64 hexagrams. They represent different combinations of yin and yang, giving us insights into how they work in all sorts of situations. It's like a guide to help you navigate those twists and turns of fate.
So we've got yin and yang, that dance of opposites. What other archetypes are shaping these synchronistic experiences?
The Synchronicity key talks about this really interesting concept, Gehenna. It was a valley outside of ancient Jerusalem.
Gehenna. I feel like I've heard that before somewhere.
Yeah. It's often translated as hell in religious texts. It was the place where they would burn garbage and even corpses. But what's fascinating is that Jehoshua, Jesus, he actually used Gehenna as a metaphor, but not for a place of eternal punishment. He used it to represent the burning away of negative karma.
Oh, so less fire and brimstone, more like a cosmic recycling center.
Exactly. It's all about transformation and purification. This ties right back into synchronicity. Think about those tough experiences we go through, those times where you feel like you're going through your own personal Gehenna.
Yeah.
Well, they can actually be catalysts for growth. They force us to face our shadows and come out stronger.
So even though it doesn't feel good at the time, those challenges are all part of some bigger design.
That's the idea. And those challenges, well, they often involve other people. Remember the concept of group reincarnation?
Yeah, the idea that we reincarnate with the same souls over and over again.
Right. It definitely makes you think about the people in your life differently. Now, imagine if we keep meeting the same souls across different lifetimes, even playing different roles in each other's stories. Those relationships, they're going to be super complex. And they're probably karmically intertwined, too. And that could explain why those seemingly random encounters, the ones that feel like anything but random, those could actually be connections from past lives.
Wow. So maybe it's not just about bumping into someone at the store. Maybe there's this whole backstory we don't even know about playing out through synchronicity. It's like we're all in a cosmic soap opera.
It definitely makes things more interesting. And it suggests that our encounters have a much deeper meaning, more purpose than we might realize at first. But this idea of interconnectedness brings up a big question. How does it all actually work? Is there any science behind how these archetypes show up in our lives?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's a cool idea, but is there evidence for this?
Well, that's where things get a little tricky. Jung himself even said that synchronicity was difficult to explain. But here's what's interesting. Modern physics is actually starting to offer some clues. Clues that point to reality being a lot more fluid and interconnected than we thought.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Tell me more.
Living in Flow talks about quantum entanglement. I know it sounds like science fiction, but it's a real thing.
Quantum entanglement. Now we're getting into Star Trek territory.
I know, right? But it's been proven in experiments. Basically, two particles, even if they're really far apart, can be linked, and they instantly influence each other's behavior.
Whoa, hold on. So they're communicating faster than the speed of light, but that's impossible.
According to classical physics, yeah. But the quantum world plays by different rules, and some physicists think that entanglement could even affect biological systems and consciousness itself.
Okay, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around that. So you're saying our minds could be entangled with other minds, or even with the whole universe.
Yeah. It's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it? And if that's true, then maybe those archetypes are like entangled particles, instantly influencing our thoughts, behaviors, and experiences, even across huge distances.
So it's like we're all connected through this invisible web, like a web of quantum entanglement.
Exactly. We're sharing information and influencing each other's realities in ways we're just beginning to understand.
This is wild. So those archetypes aren't just abstract symbols, they're like these quantum energy fields shaping everything around us.
And those moments of synchronicity, maybe they're just glimpses behind the curtain when we see how connected everything really is.
Okay, that is a lot to process.
Yeah.
So if we're all entangled and sharing info and influencing each other, does that mean free will is just an illusion?
That's the million-dollar question. Philosophers and physicists have been going back and forth on that one for centuries. But living in flow offers a really cool idea. What if free will doesn't just work on a conscious level? What if it works on a quantum level, too?
Oh, wow. So it's not just about the choices we make with our minds, but choices our unconscious minds are making on a deeper level.
Exactly. Maybe those archetypes are influencing those deeper choices, shaping the odds of certain events happening in our lives. It's not that free will doesn't exist, it's that it operates within a field of possibilities, and that field is shaped by these archetypal forces.
So it's like we're playing a cosmic game of chance, but we get to pick which cards we play.
Yeah, and the archetypes, they're like those hidden forces guiding the game.
And our choices, even the ones we're not aware of, they have consequences. They ripple out and shape the reality we experience.
It's like a giant feedback loop. Choices influence reality, and reality influences choices.
And the archetypes are like magnets, guiding the direction of that loop.
Exactly. Which brings us back to why understanding these archetypes is so important. When we can see these patterns playing out, we can start to make more conscious choices. Choices that line up with the archetypal forces that support our growth and evolution.
So instead of just watching these synchronicities happen, we can actually use them to create the life we want.
You got it. It's not about being a puppet of fate. It's about understanding that we have agency, even on that quantum level. And by learning the rules of the game, we can start to play it better and create a life that really reflects who we are, a life that's in line with our purpose. So how do we actually do that? How do we use all this knowledge? Let's explore that a little more after a quick break.
Right. We've been on quite a journey with this archetypes and synchronicity thing. But I gotta admit, I'm still not totally clear on the how-tos. Like, how do we actually use this in our lives to shape our reality? It all sounds kind of magical.
It's not magic, but it can definitely feel like it sometimes. Here's the thing. You're already interacting with those archetypes, whether you realize it or not. Every time you make a choice, take an action, you're lining up with some kind of archetypal energy.
So it's like we're always casting a vote for the kind of reality we want. But we're not even aware we're doing it.
That's a great way to put it. And the more aware you become of those archetypes, the more conscious you can be of those choices. It's like when you learn a new language. At first, it's just a jumble of sounds. But with practice, you start to pick up on those nuances, the structure, the grammar, and then you can communicate so much better.
Oh, I like that. So how do we learn to speak the language of archetypes?
It starts with paying attention. Become a detective in your own life. Notice those recurring symbols, myths, and stories. What are the themes that keep coming up? What characters do you connect with? What situations pull you back in over and over again? Those are your clues. They point to the archetypes that are at work in your life.
So we got to spot the patterns, and then what? What do we do with that info?
Here's where you ask yourself, what's this archetype trying to teach me? What qualities does it have that I might need? Qualities to develop, maybe, or integrate into my life.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we even know if we're dealing with a good archetype or a bad one? Some definitely seem more appealing than others.
That's a really common misunderstanding. Archetypes aren't good or bad in themselves. Think of them like tools. You can use a hammer to build a house, or you can use it to break a window.
I see, so it depends how you use it.
Exactly. It all boils down to the intention. And the same archetype can show up in ways that are good or bad, helpful or destructive.
So we don't judge the archetype, but we try to understand how we're using it.
Exactly. The key is to see the shadow side of each archetype, to recognize that potential for it to be misused, to go off the rails.
Oh, that's interesting.
And once you can see that, well, then you can make a choice. You can choose to align with the aspects that are actually helpful for you, the ones that support your growth and well-being.
So what if we're stuck, like in a negative pattern? Can we actually switch our alignment to a more positive archetype?
Oh, absolutely. That's where this understanding becomes really powerful. When you can see the archetype driving that negative pattern, well, you can start to choose a different path. It's like rewriting the script of your life, taking those limiting beliefs and behaviors and swapping them out for ones that empower you.
It's like we get to be the authors of our own story.
Exactly. And it's not about trying to pretend the shadow side isn't there. It's about integrating it, transcending it, embracing the wholeness of that archetype. Even the darkness has a role to play.
So the darkness is important too.
You know, it's often by facing our shadows that we actually find our true strength, our potential.
That's such a powerful idea. So instead of being scared of those tough times, we can see them as chances to grow, to change.
That's it. And those synchronicities, well, they can act like guideposts on that journey. Those meaningful coincidences, they can be messages from the universe, reflecting back to us the parts of ourselves we need to embrace.
So those synchronicities, we shouldn't just brush them off as coincidence.
They might be trying to tell us something. They're like clues in a cosmic treasure hunt, leading us to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe.
Wow. This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like I've got a totally new way of looking at life's challenges and all the possibilities. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us.
It's been a pleasure. And just remember, this is really just the beginning. The world of archetypes and synchronicity is huge, and it's endlessly fascinating. So keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and keep your eyes open for those synchronicities. The universe is always trying to tell us something, guiding us, nudging us towards our best selves.
That's a great place to leave it. So to everyone listening, keep your minds open, your hearts open, and watch out for those synchronicities. Until next time, happy exploring.
Follow Synchronicity Keys with Cecilia. For me, synchronicity isn't just a concept. It's the rhythm I walk, the breath I live. Now, let's delve into its hidden mechanics together, uncover the unseen forces at play, and align with the flow to co-create a reality shaped by synchronicity.